United Arab Emirates arrives in London tomorrow for a 2-day state visit. 3 British men who were today given 4-year prison sentences in the UAE for drugs offences are hoping that visit may help to secure their early release. The 3 Londoners, Sunit Jir, Grant Cameron and Carl Williams, deny possessing the synthetic cannabis known as spice and claim they were tortured in custody. Grant Cameron's father, Phil, says the men were very badly treated.
They were beaten, taken to the desert, there wasn't given any water. They had a gun put to their heads. They were tasered in different parts of their body. It was quite horrific.
David Cameron says he'll raise the matter with the President of the UAE.
We've said that we want to see a proper independent inquiry into this, and of course we will raise it during the visit. But I think, first of all, let's make sure there is this proper independent inquiry into what happened, and let's raise the issue and take it from there.
The torture allegations come at an awkward moment. David Cameron's been working hard to improve relations with UAE. He travelled there in November 2012 in the hope of securing the sale of 60 Typhoon aircraft. There are strategic ties too. A squadron of RAF Tornado jets is currently based at Al Minhad, an airbase south of Dubai. The World Tonight's Paul Moss is in Dubai, and he's been hearing what people there think about the allegations of torture made by the British men.
It's something of a tradition here in Dubai. Sunset drinks at Barasti, a huge restaurant-cum-bar that's all the rage with the city's expat community. Dubai tends to attract long-term visitors. People often come and work here for many years, and among the seasoned residents I spoke to this evening, there was little sympathy for the 3 British people convicted and sentenced for drug offences today.
It's an Arabic country. They have zero tolerance towards drugs, and I've got to say, you've got to expect what they're given.
What do you think about what's happened?
Well, 4 years in jail, it's a fair sentence compared to other countries in Asia where you have a death penalty.
The rules very clearly stated, and everyone should be prepared, particularly when they're coming on holiday, to play by the rules, have a good time, and then go back home in one piece.
Of course, they say that they're innocent.
Which they may very well be, but I see this in a very black and white manner, which is that in the UAE there's a massive expat community, everyone's here to have a good time, drugs are available, but at the end of the day you should stay away from things that are going to get you into trouble.
At the law firm Bin Shabib Associates, they're rather less sanguine about today's conviction. The firm represents one of the defendants, Grant Cameron, and his lawyer Khalid Butsaim told me how all 3 men reacted when the judgment was handed down.
The judgment in Arabic, they don't understand what happened. And then we'll explain to them exactly what the judgment is. They were quiet, amazed what's going on. Of course they're sad about the sentence, 4 years. Nobody wants to stay in jail for 4 years. But we will appeal for them, definitely. We're not happy with this judgment.
That appeal is now being handled by the firm's senior associate, Abdulla. I asked him what the grounds of appeal were.
They do not deny being in the car, but they do deny knowing of the fact that the car had illegal substance in it. What people need to understand is this is a rented car. It does not belong to any of them. So obviously when you rent a car, you don't go through it searching it to see if there's anything illegal in it. And we believe that this will be addressed in a better manner by the Court of Cassation, which is the High Court in Dubai.
It might seem surprising, but this case hasn't actually been big news here in Dubai. There seems to be a prevailing assumption that foreigners will come to visit and to live and work here, and some will get into trouble, whether it be for drunkenness, sexual misbehaviour, or on this occasion, allegedly, possession of illegal drugs. Indeed, some people here will tell you that the British have developed a particularly poor reputation in Dubai and the other United Arab Emirates.
Clearly, it's always a case that a few bad apples will, spoil the whole barrel. And unfortunately, the sun can bring out the worst in people.
Amal Loring comes originally from the UK, but has now married a local Emirati and converted to Islam. Her company, Mind Body Dynamics, advises foreign businesses on how their staff should behave here in Dubai. And she says that with British people, that can be a particular struggle.
Brits appear to behave in an inappropriate fashion more than, say, other nationalities. So what's going wrong? You have to draw a line in the sand and say this is unacceptable behaviour in a country that's not your own, wherever I am.
In this particular case, the 3 British people who've been convicted allege that the police assaulted them physically, there were electric shocks. Is that the sort of thing you think that people here in Dubai expect the police to do?
Given the fact that the UAE is seeking to consolidate and form relationships again with the UK, for example, the US, it's very unlikely they would torture or cover up or condone any of this behaviour.
Back at the expat bar Barasti, though, there was rather more scepticism on this point at least. Even among the people who told me that the 3 in prison today got what they deserved, there was still a belief that all might not be above board when it comes to Dubai's police force.
It's like an eye for an eye in this culture, and the police know that they can do what they want because you're in the wrong, so no one's going to believe you anyway. Like, it's their version of events, not yours, so they can do what they want.
That report from Paul Moss in Dubai. Ahmed Mansoor is an activist who's found himself on the wrong side of the UAE authorities. He's one of 5 Emirati activists who were imprisoned for 6 months in 2011 on charges of insulting the president and other senior figures. I asked him what he made of the torture claims.
I think the claim should be verified by an independent and impartial committee, and especially, that UAE is part of the Convention Against Torture. I think this is the very first step that should be taken, and I do not believe it's logical or acceptable to have that committee being part of the police. It should be completely isolated from the entity that accused basically of torturing those individuals. It has to be dealt with swiftly and transparently and independently as well.
Is it something, though, that you have ever heard about previously as far as the UAE is concerned?
Oh, yes. I mean, there are so many reports right now that are documented by many of the international human rights organizations, but most of those torture allegations are basically related to tortures that happened in the state security apparatus jails, basically, which are jails that are in unknown places. I mean, the Ministry of Interior has no control over those prisons, and people go there and they are usually kept incommunicado for an extended period of time, talking about months, and without having them meet their families or even get any legal consultation. So that kind of environment is a very suitable environment for ill treatment and degrading treatment in general and torture. And in the very current case of the UAE 94 that are being trialed in front of the Supreme Court in UAE right now.
These are people who are political dissidents, essentially. They've been charged for criticizing the government.
Well, they've been actually accused of attempting to overthrow the government and take it over. Those are facing these serious charges, and they were kept in almost solitary confinement for a period of more than 8 months without any visitation or legal consultation.
To be clear, political dissent isn't tolerated.
Absolutely not. I mean, there is zero tolerance right now in UAE for any political dissent, and also for people who criticize the government in certain aspects, especially the human rights related issues, and also if they are defending any of the current detainees. Recently, one of the individuals have been sentenced for 10 months because he tweeted about the ongoing trial of the 94 individuals whom his father is part of.
Ahmed Mansoor. We asked the UAE's embassy in London for an interview to answer some of the issues and cases raised by Ahmed Mansoor and also by the families of the 3 imprisoned British men, but no one was available. Well, Dr. Abdulkhaleq Abdulla is Professor of Political Science at Emirates University, Al Ain. I asked what he made of the allegations of torture against the 3 British men.
The United Arab Emirates, the government, the state here, the officials here have all denied these things. They said they have heard the allegations. They went through it, they investigated it, and they found that these are nothing but allegations.
David Cameron's called for an independent inquiry into those claims. How do you think that will be received in the UAE?
Will be received very positively. We would love to see any inquiry. All we know is that there has been allegations around, and The officials here have taken care of it, and if there is an official request, I think the UAE will be more than happy to look into all of this. I think the British ambassador, the British Consul General here, the lawyers have all seen the evidence, and these are claims which does not stand to the facts and the evidence that is available to the officials here.
So when the Prime Minister says that he'll raise the matter when he holds talks with the UAE President who's visiting here on a state visit, what do you think the likely response is going to be?
I don't know. I think we are very positive about our own findings. I think, this is a very senior meeting. This is a state-to-state meeting. It's a time to discuss high-level issues, very important for our both countries. And I feel very sad wasting it on minor matters like this.
Overall, what would you say is the UAE's record like on questions like human rights and so on?
Our record is as solid as any. We do have, like everybody else, probably here and there problems, and whenever these things come to the attention of the authorities, they try to address it squarely.
So you think that it's not an issue that is particularly one that the UAE needs to worry about?
Well, like any other country, probably between now and then we do have our own problems. America has its own problem with human rights issues, and so is Britain, and so is everybody else. But whenever these come to our attention, I think the government has been very responsible to take care of it. I think the UAE needs to be more democratic. I think this is a pending issue. We have been talking about this for ages and years. The government is responding to this in its own incremental way. I don't think it is the business of Britain or it is the business of Europe or the West to interfere in our internal affairs. Any outside intervention in our political reform process probably complicates it. So the more you stay away from it, the more you leave it to us, the better off we are.
Professor of Political Science, Dr. Abdulkhaleq Abdulla. The Afghan President, Hamid Karzai,